All right, because your senior people just demonstrated how much work they put into this. Now, one neck roll and you can sit down. We're going to go into Q&A now. Just a couple ground rules. I know we should remain standing, to be honest, but a couple of ground rules. If you've already asked a question, please let somebody else ask a question. When you ask your questions, let's be really concise and let's not make them multi-part, although all the questions were interesting this morning, but let's just ask one question. Madame Ethel is going to be your moderator. Keep in mind, there's some very annoying lights coming here, so we're going to try to get people to. Madame, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yes, these lights are terrible. We all feel like...
We're going to fix it at lunch.
We can, yes, hopefully. Okay, so I hope that you are all getting as excited as I am on this, because what we have been trying to do on this session is to take this future we're talking in the morning to really have different shapes according to where in the world we're sitting, and to see how this future is seen with different lenses according to which part of the globe we are in. And I hope that you're also making all those connections that I was trying to make in my mind when I was hearing all our managers talk together. You know, how can we learn from the Green Revolution in South Asia so that when we stop hunger in the world, we just don't stop the calorie intake, and we just also address micronutrients and nutrition so that the world doesn't end like South Asia is today, with all these people that are stunted in spite of having dealt with giving everyone food. How do we learn from the ICT penetration in Africa, and how can we get it to the poorest of the poor, and how can that be replicated in the world? How can we learn from how East Asia has been feeding their cities? What are the good lessons? What are the bad lessons while the world keeps on being urbanized? What does that mean for all of us? How do we learn from each region has, I don't want to go on and on and on. If I am in ECA, for example, and I have all this potential to keep on increasing yields, it's the only part of the world of the future in the climate change scenario that looks green. You know, while the whole world is red, there's a green valley there in the middle of Central Asia and in Europe. Well, what does that mean? How can, if I am working with these countries, what will be my future like? So there are lots of interactions that we can learn from how the future is being shaped with different lenses in different parts of the world. And that's what's making it so interesting and so important to understand this better, so that we can take it back to what we do every single day. So as that's an introduction, I want to see some rounds of hands, and I'm going to stand over there so the light doesn't kill me, because I cannot see you when you raise your hand, and I will take 2 or 3 questions. You can, if you have a particular person, manager, you're asking the question to, please let us know, and again, introduce yourself so that our new, the people that have just joined us know who you are. So let me start, and let me see if I can see better from here without the light.
If we can
okay, good. So, Poonam, I think, yes, good.
Thank you very much. My name is Purna. I'm senior agriculture specialist from Nepal. This is directed towards the last presentation, last session. When you were all talking about the changes that are likely to take place in the region 50 years from now or 35 years from now, I could not stop thinking of land use changes that are taking place in my country, for example. And we have seen a lot of fertile lands being lost to urbanization and development, and less fertile lands are becoming available. We may have technology advances and all that, but if we don't do anything about saving the fertile lands for production, we may have a problem later. It's not an easy task, but it's something that we cannot avoid. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Purna. And you said you were from Nepal, no? So I think that that's an important thing for us to think of. Who else? And I will take 2 or 3, and then I will go to our panel members. Dorte, I can see your hand. Let's see. Okay, that table has 2.
Thank you. My name is Aifa. I'm from Senegal, and I'm working in Senegal. Congratulations for the good presentation. I think you learned a lot over the region. My question is now, given the challenge that we describe it, particularly for Africa, do you think that Africa case is the worst case compared to the other region? And how do you predict the future of agriculture in Africa? Are you optimistic? Do you think that Africa have a promising future? my response would be yes, it is promising for three reasons. The first one is the demographic growth that we are talking about. I think it is some way a challenge, but it can be seen as well as a good opportunity, given the way that it the food demand is increasing, and this could be create more incentive for producers to supply more agricultural food. Second is the youth that we are talking about. I think also it is the challenge, but this challenge can be translated into opportunity, as it can offer good labor and the way also that youth can contribute to agriculture to drive the required change in terms of innovation. The third reason is progress. I think African agriculture did not have, this is the level of benefit that they can get from science, and this can be really a good opportunity. And for all these reasons, I think there is some positive promise for African agriculture. Thank you.
Thank you, Aifa. So I think we had a table. Dorothy, do you want to pass the... Aifa, can you pass the microphone to Dorothy? We're on the same table. And I will take these three and I will come to the panel members, and then I will come back for other rounds.
Thank you very much. This is really excellent, and I feel that we're going to do great in terms of food, of agriculture and nutrition by 2050. I'm particularly excited about the fact that now, when South Sudan, when the government yesterday decided that all the people that live in the famine areas have to just move out because the government is going to clean it from the rebels. Because with this kind of drone technology, you know, UNHCR can just be sitting in New York, they can drop their bags. WFP can even come with a wonderful, this food that Julian showed that I'm not really very familiar with myself. This is great. But in the meantime, until we reach 2050, I'm actually very concerned. In a situation where we have 29 million people in Africa that are forcibly displaced, at a time where famine is on the rise, 3 out of the 4 countries due to conflicts, 1 due to, I guess, government failure, and it's increasing by the day. What can we do at a time where the Rohingyas in Myanmar are not getting hardly the food they need for anything? 2 people can leave the communities, or they cannot work when they're in Bangladesh. In MENA, where we're seeing agricultural workers in Turkey, in MENA and Eka, we're seeing the Syrians, more than 50% of the agricultural workers are under 18, 10% are under 5 years of age. So there's a whole level that we have missed in this presentation. I know you had a hard time, but I think it also gives us an opportunity now to say, okay, these big themes seem to be thought a lot about. And I hope that we can step up also the fragility part. And I would like to hear, can we give 1 minute to every manager to say what they're thinking and how they plan to go ahead on this? Thank you.
Okay, Dorothy, you forgot to introduce yourself with your enthusiasm. Do you mind doing that?
I'm Dorothy Werner. I am lead economist in the MENA-ECA region.
Thank you very much. So let me take these 3 and I will come back to others. You can think, and we will have short answers, okay? But let's see. We have a question about the future of Africa that I am going to direct traffic here. Perhaps you can tell us about the future, the bright future of Africa. Then we'll have a question of fragility. Perhaps I can put it to men instead of giving 1 minute to all. But how do we see fragility moving forward in the future? And we have a question on how landscape management is the future of land degradation here. And perhaps, Gary, you can say something about that and what we are doing in Latin America on that. Dina.
I'll start, but then
2 minutes to each of them max.
yeah. You know, I'll
Okay.
start, but I would like also Simeon and Mark to pitch in since we are triplets in Africa. I'm very optimistic about the African future because, as you mentioned, we have the advantage that we have a lot of young, smart people. There's been a question, is this going to be a demographic dividend, or is it going to be a demographic time bomb? Time bomb, because if you cannot create the jobs for the young, they will be the one who will be going out there fighting and creating unrest. So our challenge right now is to really be able to create those jobs. But to do that, we have to have better skills. So we really need to have better education, better vocational, better agriculture education, better entrepreneurship education to prepare all these young people to take on the challenge of creating, as Ethel said, moving up the value chain. So not only do you make agriculture better on farm through this ICT and other types of better technologies, biofortified, higher yielding, drought-resistant varieties, but also to create the skills for the young people to go up the value chain as well. And that will address some of your conflict question, Dorte, is that a lot of the young people are going to fight for ISIS or Boko Haram because they don't have any jobs at home. So the question is, how do we create good jobs at home through livelihood activities, even in the short term?
Julian, do you want to get here?
Yeah, you can just start speaking.
Okay, thanks. Dorothy, great question. And as you know, we have very much of an emerging portfolio on the issue of conflict with activities in Yemen, Turkey, and we're thinking about doing other things in some parts of Central Asia. So, the challenge here is thinking about the future and thinking about how these systems in the future are going to help mitigate these things. And I think Dina touched upon a lot of that. So, as you have people that are able to run small businesses and engage productively in the business of agriculture and have jobs, maybe you'll see less extremism. I think also that most of the situations we see in emerging fragility and conflict arise because of politics and because of people trying to grab power. And the more technology we can diffuse, the more information people have, and the more we can bypass many of those sort of arcane political institutions, I think the greater probability we have of preventing these things from happening. And I think the third piece is that technology can allow us to predict these things are coming and hopefully intervene before people start starving and we have a situation like we have developing in Yemen. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to try to respond to Poonam's question on land use and experience in Latin America. I think one of the specificity of Latin America compared to other regions, I just came back from 7 years in MENA, where really the land use issue can be seen from a perspective of land scarcity. In many of the MENA countries, land is a serious constraint. Water, natural resources in general is a serious constraint. In the case of Latin America, as I was saying in my presentation, in many countries it's a different situation. We have, fairly, abundance of land. You take a country like Argentina, a lot of land, good rainfall, and low population density. So I think that even in those situations, we have to factor in the future impact of climate change. So improving productivity, using climate smart agriculture, it's part of trying to put the sustainable use use of natural resources on a sustainable path. On the other hand, also I think more and more in Latin America we are trying to have that approach of landscape approach. So you have very interesting cases where, for instance, in Central America, there have been a lot of effort put in terms of reforestation, restoring the natural resources. But in many cases, I think we have to go way beyond the issue of reforestation. The issue is becoming really to put in place sustainable and inclusive agricultural production system. And this is where the trend is going in many countries, especially in Central America, because at the end of the day, we will be able to feed 9 billion people by 2020 only if we have agricultural systems that are sustainable, then that are inclusive and that can create job that will reduce the impact of the ISIS and the Boko Haram and the like. Thank you.
Nathan, you wanted to come
Excuse
in,
me
and
while I
then I will
fix my
take some
phone.
more questions.
I just wanted.
Up.
Hello? Okay. I just wanted to come in on Purna's comment on land use and sort of supplement what Gary said there. We had a very interesting engagement in the Mekong, on the Mekong Climate Change Resilience Project, which I think is important to highlight here. And I think what's important to highlight is, it's very easy to talk about these things theoretically. What's really challenging is getting the different line ministries to work together, getting them to in a pragmatic sense. And the opportunity that's presented for us as a global practice is really, or us as the World Bank Group, is to really influence that narrative and how that's done. What we found in this particular engagement is that, first of all, to get them to realize that they've got a spatial problem that they have to fix, and they need to think about it from the various perspectives. And coming in based on an agroecological assessment, looking at it from the water perspective, looking at it from agricultural production practices, looking at it from environment, and really coming with a holistic package to respond to. And I think what we've found is that getting that discussion going in a tangible manner is really what gets discussions going. Because when you present the theory of it, it's not very clear, right? But when we presented that actually moving from 3 croppings per year in rice to 1 helps you save water, helps you get higher value for your resource, et cetera, et cetera. And I think we collectively need to think about this. And by the way, we can't do it on our own. We need to be working with these other family members, i.e. our water friends, our environment friends, and we can get it done. But it really needs proactive action on our part, both internally and externally.
Each of these questions probably deserves like 40 minutes of response, because we all have so many lessons that we have learned from different parts of the world on this. And I hope that this can be part of what we do, all of us together this week. Let me take some other questions. Over there in the back, here. Okay, I'll take these 3.
Hi, I'm Adarsh from the India office, and I'm wondering, is there any good news in any of these challenge buckets where, if you had to pick sort of one successful example from the last year or 2 years that we in the other regions could look to replicate, what would that be?
Okay, so you all think about one success in each of your regions, and I will give you 10 seconds. I can think of 200 of them, but I will let them answer. Okay, let's see. Good question. Let's go there.
Yeah, hi, I'm Chris Brett. I can claim to be new at the bank because I'm less than 4 months, so I'm going to try and get away with a sneaky question. Land. I'm personally a bit disappointed that in the presentations, nobody's actually come up with saying that land will be an asset class. We talked about land tenure for I don't know how many years. I've been in this game for 35 years. In 1983, I went to Nigeria and I was told to look at land tenure. And still, we're looking at it, but we haven't done anything. So my point is, do we see that debate being solved? Land as an asset class, valued by people, adding value, financial value to the agricultural systems, a tradable asset that we can scale up. That'd be my question.
Thank you. And I will take the third one there.
Hi, my name is Edna, and I work for the Agriculture Global Practice Global Engagement Unit. I have 2 questions, and they're based upon what was said by 2 of you up there. One of them is about the whole change in consumption means, how people are eating now more outside of the house. We all know that when you cook at home, you pay better attention to the amount of salt you might put in your food, or how nutritious your food is. How is this changes in consumption means impacting the whole situations that you're seeing in your regions, and how are you incorporating this into the conversations that you're having with your clients? That's one of the questions. The second question I have is the whole issue about making agriculture cool. So I am one of those people who are on the younger side of things, and I'm scratching my head a bit, like going, how do you make agriculture cool, My question around that is maybe perhaps we need to start thinking about how to start kids young, right? When kids still like playing in dirt and mud and things like that. And my question around there is, are we doing anything around influencing the education policies so that basically kids can start getting thinking agriculture is cool from a very young age, particularly in African countries, because I know agriculture is being stripped out a little bit in the education system. So how are we handling those issues? Those are my questions.
So thank you. I will take one of the two because we said one question for each, and then we can. Let me do this, and then I will get. I'm sure there are plenty of questions, but we will try to take as much as we can. Let me see. I will start by asking Chris. You mentioned a very good question on how land tackles all this, and land is on every single trend that we have seen. I can think about land moving forward. I can think about land being a root cause of conflict and fragility. I can see land being essential, or land tenure being essential for doing landscape management moving forward. If land has an owner, it's much easier to take care of externalities. I can see land on the demographics dimension. I can see land everywhere. But Martin, perhaps I can ask you what you think about how land comes into this. And I will ask Nathan you to bring the question of, we were talking about food outside of the farm and how that evolves. And let's see who wants to make agriculture cool. Whomever wants to answer. Okay, Pretty, perhaps you can answer agriculture cool, and then I will go 5 seconds to each of you to tell us one thing that you think is really innovative and positive that is happening in your region that we can share with the rest. So let me start, Martin.
Okay. Thanks for this question on land and land assets. I mean, it's definitely something we're looking at in South Asia. At the same time, it's a very sensitive issue. So we're trying to get our arms around that issue, but I mean, we have not been, I think, very successful. Of course, what I said in my presentation, land is very critical constraint. I mean, there's no land frontier left in South Asia. At the same time, I mean, I see you have a favorable tailwind in the sense that, you know, with the whole shift towards high-value agriculture, where consumer demand is going, actually small farms are becoming actually more profitable. I always say, you know, a 3-acre wheat farm is actually a very small farm, but a 3-acre vegetable farm actually is actually a very big farm. So it is a very important issue. I think because of the sensitivity, we have not been able to tackle this head on. I think with the change towards, you know, and the shift towards high value agriculture, we'll be able to work around it. At the same time, also what I see in our agribusiness project, where we try to kind of establish public-private partnerships and bringing in private sector investments. I mean, there is definitely an issue where actually we need to kind of look at land as an asset and ensuring access of the private sector to land in a very systematic way. This, I think, is an agenda ahead of us that we need to tackle. But I mean, right now, what I say in South Asia, if we look at our portfolio, our pipeline, this is definitely something actually that we need to engage on. On the successful, you want me to kind of take that? No, okay.
So that's a very good question on the consumption patterns. And actually, this is, if you look at developed countries, look at the US, most of the bad dietary habits happen from processed foods in urban centers, etc. In a sense, you're seeing that in the rising middle class in Asia as well, right? And mainly because of the fast food, processed foods, etc. We don't necessarily see that in countries like Japan and Singapore, for example, because they have very regulated, informal food centers in urban areas. So this is an area where starting to put in regulation in urban centers on these sorts of food, out-of-home restaurant eating, and on processed food, etc., is an area where we think that we have to get increasingly involved. And this is why I brought up that slide on smart cities and food policy in cities. It's a tricky one. It's one that we haven't dealt with. But the reality is there's going to be a lot more processed food eating, and we have to get on top of it from a regulatory perspective, and in terms of getting the clear responsibility within government for who takes the lead on defining the policies for that. So.
Thank you, Pretty.
Yes, so thank you for that question. I think agriculture is inherently cool. We just have to rebrand it. We have to rebrand it in a couple of ways. First, I think we need to see agriculture as the nexus, as the platform where all good things come together, whether it's food, whether it's climate, whether it's health related, whether it's working up the food system. I was going to say food chain, but up the food system in jobs that matter today, in jobs relating to agribusinesses, in processing, in salvaging, rescuing food which otherwise goes into the dumpster, whether it's in preparing healthy, nutritious meals, and whether it's